Hello, welcome back to Bolt. This is Bio Enchanted, and today we're going to begin the final chapter of the game.
We did it! Bolt, we did it! He's on his way to my dad, and so are we. Dad's up there somewhere. Come on.
So it's finally time to break into Calico's lair. It is a very nice location. I do quite like this whole sequence of levels.
I'm gonna find a safer way in. They're all yours, Bolt. Have fun.
So while Penny sneaks in, let's explore the grounds, shall we? Of course, being very careful around all these mines. And of course we have a massive fight, because why wouldn't we? It's the main lair of the main villain. Of course there's going to be a lot of hench people to fight. Yeah, this sequence of levels has some quite difficult aspects to it. The combat's not really one of them though. It's actually it's got a lot of unique challenges though, and I quite enjoy it for that. And the environment is just generally, it's very pretty with a lot of green in the palm trees and the pristine white building to contrast against the naturalistic parts of the island. It's just a very nice place to be. Of course it makes sense that a classy villain like Calico would make his home here. At least this is his home base for this arc of the TV show that this is supposed to be emulating anyway. He might have other home bases that we haven't seen in other seasons of the show. But we don't really know because we don't really see that much of the show in the movie. I do kind of feel though that Calico was underutilized a little bit in the movie. Like, it would have been nice to have, like, when the reality check's setting in for Bob fully, it would have been kind of interesting to see him interacting with Calico offset towards the end. But I can understand that they didn't have time for that kind of thing. You already had all the stuff with Penny and the henchmen and all that lot. But also, it's kind of thematically appropriate that Calico never comes up after the reality check sets in fully. Because, of course, the whole point of Calico at that point of the story is that bots realise that he's irrelevant. He's not even thinking about him anymore. So, of course, he's not even going to go looking for him or anything like that. He's just kind of not even part of, like, he's not even in bots' worldview at that point anymore. He's completely let that out of his head entirely. But it's kind of in my head canon that after the events of the movie, though, that Calico went to, the actor that played Calico, of course, went to go see Penny and her mother after the fire, just to make sure they were okay, because, of course, when a colleague's been through something like that, you don't just ignore them. It makes sense that you want to check up on them and make sure they were okay, you know? Maybe say his goodbyes and everything, given how hectic that day was on set. But I do feel, though, in general, with the story of the movie, I feel that Mindy from the Network is definitely one of the most underrated of the characters in the story, really. Like, well, she's one of the more underrated Disney characters in general, because I really just like her as a person. Because Mindy from the Network starts off seeming like she's just going to be the mean executive type, and she plays that up at first. because she's trying to put the fear of God in the director. But of course, because he's a massive man-child who's a petty little idiot, he deliberately pulls this enormous, terrible move, deliberately, calculatedly terrible, to annoy the audience, and specifically to give her, what she claimed she wanted, unhappy 8 to 35-year-old, because the director is more obsessed with making a point than he is about preserving his actual, cast members. He doesn't care that everyone's going to get fired if he screws this whole thing up. He just wants to make his little point. So yeah, I quite like as well that with Mindy, as well as that kind of contrast, I also quite like that she is the one person in the whole movie that doesn't talk down to Penny at all. She talks to her like an adult. She just tells her exactly what the situation is and advises her on the best way to deal with it. No condescension, no sugarcoating of the truth or anything like that. She's just like, look, if the show doesn't go on, then a lot of good people are going to lose their jobs. And it's just a very realistic and very kind of reasonable thing for her to, because of course she's just focused on keeping the show going because she's keeping everyone's jobs basically. She's having to be the bad guy because someone has to get the director to do what needs to be done. And since he only really seems to respond to harsher criticism and to being forced into doing certain things, that's what she has to do with. So just overall, I really enjoy Mindy from the Network. She's a really fun character with a very good dynamic with Penny in that one sequence, and it says a lot about her as a person in general. She's just she's just one of the more interesting people in the movie because of that contrast between what you'd expect of her to be like and what she's actually like. There's also a fun contrast in the movie. Rhino is basically the reality check, despite the fact that he's the character with the least grip on reality. Mittens is trying to get Bolt to understand what's really going on, but she's unsuccessful because he's not willing to listen to that kind of reasoning. He only really notices when he has to be rescued in a way that he can't rationalize in any way. He was helpless, and the hamster saved him, and that's kind of that's what really pushes it into his head, not just that he hasn't got any superpowers, but also the true nature of what it means to be a hero. That's kind of where he really learns the kind of strength of heart it will need to rescue Penny at the end of the movie. It's for real, by using the tricks she's taught him as part of the movie in a more reasonable and realistic way, in helping her survive the fire. And of course helping himself as well, because he's kind of doomed in that situation as well. It's a very interesting way the narrative plays out, and I really enjoy that about the movie. Oh yeah, this first part of the level is mostly combat. This first main level of this area. But I do quite like the gradual, vertical momentum, and also just the fact that you can see the main, final area basically right in the background there, looming over you over most of the level. That's quite fun. Don't know what happened with that glitch there, but it didn't really skip anything important. It was just a fall onto the platform. Sorry about that. Didn't realise it had done that. I think, no, I'm done waxing philosophical about Bolt for today. So let's just continue with the level, shall we? Also, these lasers, we're going to see what they actually do in a minute. I'm just not tripping them because I'm good at this part. So here's what those lasers do. If you trip them, the whole platform starts collapsing beneath you. And now we have a relatively tricky part. It's tricky because of the very strange kind of camera angle that you can't really get a good handle on the perspective, like how close the lasers actually are to you, and the way they move is very unusual, so this elevator was quite a tricky sequence to get through. As you can see though, it's not too bad if you're just careful and pay attention to how the lasers are actually moving. You just need to be, again, very careful getting through it. So let's get through, I believe, one last big fight. These diskies that I hate. Yeah, the diskies somehow get a little bit weird sometimes if you try and push them through a wall. They kind of have a corrective measure where they can kind of unclip themselves. It's very funny to see though. It's just kind of there, and the physics on the bigger enemies sometimes can be a little bit weird. And here, of course, is a roly-poly boy. Let's focus him down, shall we? Kind of reminds me of those aliens from Xenoblade Chronicles X that purify the atmosphere. They're like basically, they literally eat pollution. They're pretty cool. I like the aliens in that game, although 90% of them you don't see outside of side quests. If you don't do side quests in that game, you won't meet half the content in that game. Like 90% of the characters won't show up. But those guys were a fun species, and I quite enjoy the idea of them. And this guy, just visually, he reminds me of them. It's a bit of a tangent there, but yeah. Xenoblade X has some really good side content and otherwise kind of poor overall gameplay, which is a shame. Because I like the setting of that game a lot. It just takes a lot to get to it. And there we have it.
Bolt, what's wrong?
Are you crying? Is it because I kidnapped your daddy? Or because I hurt your little dog? Then we're even. Because you and your little mutt, you sunk my ship, destroyed my cars, thrashed my men, and... Actually, your sad little displays don't affect me.
I know what you're doing. You're using satellites with focusing mirrors to bounce that beam around the Earth and neutralize all the atomic weapons. All but yours.
Interesting theory.
You gave it away when you used it against Bolt and drained his powers.
Smart girl. You think you know everything, don't you? But your dad's weapon does far more than that. It's rather like melting butter with a blowtorch, only on a much grander scale. Yes, it looks like there's a lot you don't know. Didn't know I was gonna do that, did you?
You okay, boy? I have to go find Dad. He'll make you better.
Oh dear. I do quite like that scene because it is quite a funny interaction. Like, Calico just has a lot of personality in that sequence. I really enjoy that cutscene in general because of that. I was quite like his, like, mocking whining, that kind of thing. But, as of this level, we seem to be in a bit of trouble.
I can't reach the top. Bull, come here, boy.
So this is not a good position to be in.
I'm gonna go check the bolt.
So we will get out of it next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time with hopefully less visual glitches in the video, but at least it didn't affect the synchronization of the audio. So I'll see you then. Goodbye.